Welcome back to our channel, everyone. My name is Joe Buskins. This is our family's boat shop, and we are now in episode 8 of our project boat rebuild. And this episode is going to be all about repairing screw holes. Pretty common problem. It's not a major deal. Most boats are going to have them, and today we're going to teach you how to fix them. We're going to jump right into it. Now, first and foremost, obviously, if you got a project boat, you're going to want to remove all the screw holes. Now, generally, I like to chase them out with a drill bit, something that's slightly larger than the screw itself. So we've got a couple screw holes here. Basically, kind of just ream those out just a bit. Now, for the sake of time, I've already done some of the other screw holes and got them all cleaned out and prepped. Prep is very, very important. And if you're just new to the channel, you'll find that I do repeat that in previous episodes, that good preparation makes all the difference. But we also try to show variety here on the channel. There's more than one way to get a good job or a quality result when you're doing this kind of work. Now we're moving over to what I call a chamfer bit. It is excellent for cleaning out. Now obviously we've already done some of these, but you can see how quickly it can take some of that broken and damaged material out of the screw holes once you've chased them with a drill bit. Now, I'm not really going to be able to access the backside of these screw holes at all, but on these I am, and this is going to be on the face of the console. So what I did do earlier in prep work is we came in on the inside. I know it's a tricky angle there for my cameraman, but we are going to be chamfering out, or I've already chamfered out the back side of the screw holes so that we can put some structural filler in there. Now, again, talking about variety, there's a lot of ways you can do things, and I want to give folks at home some options. One of the options, if you don't feel comfortable making your own putties and fillers, we've been using a lot of the Fiberglass. This is a short strand fiberglass reinforced body filler, and totally fine for above the waterline applications like working on a console. Another option might be the Gelcoat Formula 27. What's cool about it is kind of a, it's white or maybe a light gray in color, and it works really, really good, especially with white gel coats that you're repairing, is because you don't have a difference in color. It's the same color as a white console, for example. Now, obviously, if you got a darker console, it wouldn't match it. That's okay. Now, I wanted to show you folks, again, some options as far as making different putties and fillers. This is going to be a fiber-rated filler that we made that's kind of more a structural filler. We used the vinyl ester resin, and we actually took some fiberglass mat, some CSM fibers, and cut it up with a scissor in little bitty pieces and made that. But it's got long strands and it's kind of coarse and it's hard to get down in just a little chamfered out screw hole. Now I did make another filler, same deal. We used the vinyl ester on this, but this time we used some of the 1/4 inch milled fibers, and we used a little bit of the colloidal silica. And basically, if you want to make this at home, just start with maybe an ounce or 2 of your resin of choice. Again, we really like the vinyl ester resin from Fiberglass Warehouse. Be sure to check them out if you've never used it before. Vinyl ester is really a happy medium. It's much better than polyesters, but it's has more applications in my opinion. It works better with gel coats and whatnot as far as project boats. Now, there's also another option you could use, and that would be to make a thickened gel coat paste such as this. You can see it hangs on the wooden paddle pretty readily, and that is purely just going to be your white gel coat, and we're going without wax on that one, and then you're going to be adding some of the colloidal silica. And so you can see there's options here, folks. There's different ways. There's kind of good, better, best. But what we're doing today in my shop, I like to use something a little more structural. If I have access to the backside, if possible, that's the way I like to go. So we're going with the 1/4 inch milled fibers, the vinyl ester resin initially, and then we're going to be coming back with a gel coat paste. Now, one thing I like to do when we're getting ready to, say for example, add some of the structural filler from the back side in our screw holes back there, so that we don't have a lot of material overrun on the face of our console, I'm just going to go ahead and tape these off so that we don't have any of that material run out on the face or the front side. That's going to make cleanup quite easy, and it's going to really keep our material consolidated right where we need it. Now I have already, like I said, chamfered there on the back side. Prep is key, and I'm going to be showing you folks important steps throughout all of the video. Now I know our videos tend to run long, but they are highly detailed. These are professional grade videos, high in content, so don't get discouraged if the videos run a little bit on the long side. Now you could clean or wipe the back side of that if you wanted to with a little bit of acetone. You could blow it off with an air nozzle. There's a lot of ways. You could even use a vacuum, for example. There it is. I was looking for my handy dandy little blow nozzle there. Just going to give a little, make sure there's no dust inside of those. And let's go straight to mixing up a batch of our filler. Now some good PPE is always important. You guys will always see me wearing some glasses, wearing some gloves. We are in a big open air shop, so ventilation is not really a problem, but if you're in an enclosed space, you're going to want to wear a good quality respirator. Now I've got some little mixing boards set up here. I've had some questions about this. This was actually sign board material, and you may be able to go to your local sign shop. It's about 1/8 thick. It's some kind of a plastic or polymer. It's flexible and it works really, really good for a mixing board. We're not going to need a huge amount. That's probably about a 1/2 ounce, close to maybe an ounce worth of material there. I'll make a little divot right inside, and we're going with just a few drops, probably about 5, 6, 7, 8 drops or so of the Norox. That's the MEKP. That's good stuff, not to be confused with MEK. That's kind of different. You're going to want an MEKP for your activator, and you're going to see this putty is going to kind of change colors once you add the catalyst. It'll go from almost like a purple to more of a green or gray. Matter of fact, there may be a little bit of white gel coat residue on my mixing board. You can see it's kind of changing the color of the putty a little bit. That's quite all right. Don't let that freak you out. If you're at home, if you've mixed some white gel coat on your board, you may see a little bit of that residue come through. All right, and what we're gonna do, it's gonna be a little tricky to get in there or see, but folks at home maybe can see you got those screw holes from the back, and this is gonna be much stronger than just pure gel coat. We want this boat to be really robust and heavy duty, so I'm gonna put a little more in there than maybe the bare minimum. This one's kind of up high there. I usually like to make several passes and from different directions. That's going to make sure that you get the filler all the way in. You folks will notice I almost always wear a long sleeve shirt to keeping fiberglass dust off of you and splinters at bay. It's part of the reason y'all will notice I'm reaching my arm in through these cubbies here, and if you got short sleeve shirts on, these edges will kind of get ya. So be careful. Fiberglass splinters are a real thing. That's another hazard of potentially working with this stuff, but it doesn't really bother me once you've learned how to kind of work around it, work with it. All right, and one more right in there. All right, so this is going to be a 2-phase process. We are filling these holes, and then we are going to be using some gel coat or some gel coat paste Now, if you don't have a quality shop vac in your arsenal, I would highly recommend it. I've got a big, this is just from Home Depot. It's the largest one they made. We've added one of the Oneida, the dust deputies. That's going to help catch a lot of your bigger, heavier material, and it makes your filters last a lot longer and very reasonably priced. So we got a little dust here. Now, this console has been sanded more or less from top to bottom, and we're going to be re-gel coating and resurfacing everything. But if you were at home and say you were just fixing 1 or 2 screw holes, you would definitely want to mask or tape fairly tight. For example, like you would kind of want to go around the perimeter if it was just 1 screw hole you were fixing. And that's going to limit exposure for the material around it. And I'll just demonstrate on this one, kind of show you what I'm talking about. And that would probably be good enough. If you wanted to go a little further, you could even hit those corners a bit. But because this console is going to be sanded and surfaced and worked on front to back, top to bottom, I'm not really worried about it so much on these. Now you'll notice this one, I can see through to the back side of it, and sometimes you might put a piece of tape on the back side just to keep material from falling through. There you go, that ought to be good enough. And then we're gonna just come right in here and work some of that putty right into the screw holes. And I'm going to be wiping it fairly tight. And you notice this material with the fibers in it, it does not run like a thinner putty might. It kind of stays put. And I'm going to work it in there pretty aggressively. Sometimes you got to go back and forth 2 or 3 different times, but I'm not really trying to overfill this too much because we are going to be coming back with a Gelcoat paste that's going to kind of help with the cosmetics and with the filling. Working it back and forth 2 or 3 different angles though is going to really help work that in there and get a quality bond. Now I did go a little crazy there. I mixed a little too much. That happens sometimes. I usually like to have plenty to work with, usually pretty good at estimating, but not a big deal. Now, one thing that you may want to do, like on the surface of the screw holes we were just working on, there is a little bit of residue. Maybe my cameraman can zoom in there. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of residue outside, and if you haven't taped, one thing you can do is use a little bit of acetone just to kind of wipe some of that excess residue off. Not really going over the screw holes too much, but and what we're going to do is give this a little time to cure. You can see we can kind of just clean that up nice and tight, just as easy as that. Or like I said, you could tape around the perimeter, and that's going to help keep everything nice and tight. So we've given our fiberglass putty mixture about an hour, hour and a half or so to dry. Then I'm going to show you folks at home, you know, if you're kind of new to this, a lot of people ask like, how long should you wait? Once it has firmed up and you got some resistance there and it's not tacky or sticky or soft to your finger there, you should be good to go. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull our masking, and you can see we've already pulled the tape off of a couple of these. We're going to move right on down the line. You can see the filler has come in from the back side, but we've done a little bit of sanding on this one prior to filling on the back side. Now that one we can see, but it's not flushed all the way up, but that is okay. And that one is kind of somewhere in between this one and that one. So we may have a little bit of tape residue. Sometimes that happens. And before we start sanding and prepping, I'm gonna take a little bit of acetone. That is kind of my go-to cleaner or solvent. And I'm just gonna hit that just a bit and make sure we don't have any residue. Now remember, acetone is highly flammable. You would want to wear a respirator and gloves when you're dealing with this stuff. And then we had put that little bit of tape on that one right there. Let's go ahead and clean everything. There we go. Acetone and a paper towel, pretty hard to beat for most instances. Now, what I like to do when we're prepping to fill from this other side, we're going to be using some 80 grit. This is Sunmite brand. It's a little less expensive than 3M, and our local supplier, BMG, is one of our local fiberglass suppliers, and they carry a lot of the Sunlight and the 3M. Sometimes I buy one or the other. They both can certainly work, but I wanted to show you folks what I'm doing on these. Now, I had already kind of done it on these a bit. I just really focused in on the area right around the hole that we're filling. Same for here. And what we're kind of doing is softening those edges a little bit, and we're making it so that when we add some filler in there, it blends or transitions. It's kind of a nice soft fill. I feel like if you just go straight in there, and if you've, say for example, you just got the screw hole and you were to just chase it straight out with a drill bit and then try to put some putty in there, a lot of times you'll create like what I call a halo, where you can kind of see the edges of that drilled out area. Whereas if you kind of fill it from the back side and then soften the transition a bit, you can see we're sanding back to where we've got some fibers around, and then it transitions into the gel coat around your screw hole. Now these, we haven't done any sanding prior, and it can take just a minute or so to get where you want to be, but you can see it happening there nice and easy. Now obviously you could use some power tools, but sometimes power tools are a little much, and you can take more material than you really should or want to. Now of course, when you're cleaning these screw holes out, there are some other options like a good carbide, a conical burr. This is a little air tool. Sometimes you can even use your little 90-degree angle grinders. And these little discs here, something a lot of folks aren't familiar with, those are called a Rolock disc, and they kind of just spin on these little angle grinders. And those are super handy for cleaning up. Like if you're working a little area like that, you can really do some detail or finesse work. Or you can even use an angle grinder with a cutoff wheel like this. And I'll kind of show you, for example, I don't think I've really shown this technique much on the channel. Like if you want to clean out that hole right there, you can kind of use that on edge to take some material out. Just an option. So again, there's so many different ways to get a good result. Hope folks at home just kind of use your creativity, use your imagination a little bit. What I'm showing you is not like set in stone, although if you want to follow what we're doing, you know it's going to work. We will be transitioning very soon to our transom replacement in our project boat. So we're going to be doing a transom, stringers, floors. I know folks have been anxiously awaiting that, and that is coming very soon. We are probably going to put the console here to the side. As soon as this video is done, we'll be prepping for some heavy work on the project boat. All right. Try to suck up as much of that telling you, a good shot back. And before we go to getting our gel coat ready, let's go ahead and wipe this down with a little more acetone, clean things up. get any dust out of there. We always wear gloves, not only protect ourselves, but it also protects your work from the oils that can be in your skin. Good quality prep work is key. Okie dokie. All right, let's move right over. Y'all follow me back to the table. Now again, remember, you could have used something like the Fiberglass or the Formula 27 instead of making your own putty. So if you feel intimidated, and we will put links below our video description or Amazon links for convenience for you folks at home. So we've got a mixing board. It's nice and clean, and we have made a Gelcoat paste. Again, we just use some standard white Gelcoat from Fiberglass Warehouse, and then we use the colloidal silica, and you just add a little bit of silica as you're going along. Add a little bit, and all of a sudden you'll be able to get the consistency that you're looking for. But that is nice. That is nice and creamy there. That is probably a little more than I really need, so we will put that back. And it's just going to take 2 or 3 drops in an amount. That's less than a spoonful, I would imagine. 3 drops, that was 4. That's going to be plenty. Plenty. Remember, generally around 2% is on the upper end, but if you're doing just a thin application or a fairly small amount, sometimes you can get away with putting a little more. We're going to mix this very thoroughly. Kind of like to pick it up, drag it across, cut it. Now again, this does not have wax in it, because we're going to be going over this with some more pure Gelcoat that has not been thickened with the colloidal silica. I do that because I believe you get a little better finish. You got pure Gelcoat versus a thickened Gelcoat. Thickened Gelcoat has the filler in it on the last coat on the surface. I really like the purest form of Gelcoat possible. And again, that's just me. I know there are folks that will use a thickened Gelcoat directly, and that's okay as well. Good thorough mix. Kind of want to mix it till you know it's done, and then mix it a little more. Just remember that the clock starts ticking as soon as you put the catalyst in there. Want to be sure the blade is clean and pick it up. All right, folks, let's go back over here. Now again, if you were working on a nice pristine console and you weren't refinishing the whole thing like I am doing, you would want to take some blue tape and border around these little areas here, just to kind of keep it isolated or consolidated. And I'll tell you what, let's start down here with these actually. You can see there's going to be some little pinholes. But that thickened paste is going to give you a lot more build initially. Now again, you could use just straight Gelcoat, but here in the boat shop we try to move things along as rapidly as possible, and I keep a lot of this stuff readily available. We are going to be putting a hinge back on, but there's a high chance that the hinge for this seat, there's a high chance that it will be different than the one that came with this boat originally, and I do not have the one that came with this boat originally. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill everything. Again, kind of fill it from multiple angles. You know, forgive the Blue Jays in the background there. It's okay to overfill a little bit as well, folks. Not a problem. Notice I'm kind of making a pass and coming back and adding a little bit more. Alright. It's going to usually take more than one pass, so don't let that discourage you if you expect to get it in one. That's not how it usually works. Here we go with another batch of the thickened gel coat. Now we've already added catalyst to this. Very important to remember, always add your MEKP. And we're gonna just add a little more material. Matter of fact, I don't know if the light will show. I can see it's a tiny bit low there and a tiny bit low, tiny bit low. So we're gonna go ahead and overfill it a bit. It's better, in my opinion, to overfill than underfill. Get plenty of material on there. That way when you go to sanding, you won't have to come back and sand it again, or fill it again rather. That can be pretty frustrating, honestly. Try to avoid that. And it's okay if there's a little bit of a edge there. Not really hurting much, but if you wanted to dress that down a little bit, you could pull it in just like so. And we're gonna come over this lastly with some gel coat with wax, but that looks better. Same deal up here. We're gonna go ahead and we're just gonna add a splash of thickened gel coat over our other screw holes. Again, prime example of a lot of times having to apply more than one coat. Matter of fact, I would say most of the time 2 or 3 coats is gonna be right. We're just using these little flexible putty blades. These are a Bondo brand, actually. A lot of times you can pick these up at your local big box stores in the paint, or at your auto body if you've got a local Napa or somewhere that sells automotive or auto body supply. And again, I will try my best to put a link below the video's description. Also found a couple more. There were a couple more holes back here. This console probably had at least 50 holes, I would imagine. You can see how nice that thickened. Now I could overfill it if I wanted to and just kind of go heavy. Sometimes it takes a little finesse there. Come back the other direction. We're trying to work any little bubbles out, any creases. Kind of got to know when to stop. Know when to hold them and know when to fold them. So it's been about an hour or so since we put our second filler coat of gel coat on, and you can see it has firmed up nicely. I'm not getting a bunch of tack off of that. So we are ready to mix up some gel coat. Y'all come over here with me to our mixing table. So we're going to use some gel coat with wax. That's from Fiberglass Warehouse. Now if you folks want to order some materials, they offer a discount code for Fish Bump TV viewers. So be sure to take advantage of that and save some money. Yep, very good. So I'm going to mix this up just a bit. Sometimes the wax will settle in. And I'm not really going to worry about straining this, although you could give a couple ounces in there. That's probably going to be plenty and then some. And I am going to go ahead and add a little more wax to it. This is from Fiberglass. That they call it Surface Seal, Modifier C, wax solution. Same deal. I'm going to mix that up just a bit. I want this to be extra waxy, just so that I don't go too crazy. I'm going to pour it into a cap and then pour it in. That's probably 6 or 7 cc's or so. Pretty good bit, but I haven't found, I'm sure there's a point where up to a certain point it may affect the cure or be a problem, but as long as you keep the ratios of your wax additive somewhere close to about double of what your maximum catalyst would be, so I would say somewhere around 3, 4, 5%, give or take. And I'm going to mix that wax in very thoroughly. Now, one thing to note, if you're in cold climates, sometimes the wax in the Modifier C or Surface Seal will kind of congeal and thicken up, and you're going to have to put it in a warm room or next to a heat lamp, or warm it up somehow to get it to dissolve, or else you'll have big flakes of wax in there. Going to use our little graduated, that's MEKP. We're going to go with, probably about 2 or 3 cc's there. Now I have mixed this so much, y'all, Again, I grew up in a boat shop. Father was a boat builder. We built this 29 footer behind us from absolute scratch. And I have mixed thousands of gallons of materials, and you kind of get to where you know pretty good by just eye and by hand. But generally speaking, again, remember that you're going to want between 1 and 2% by volume catalyst to your gel coat and to resin. The colder it is, the more catalyst you're going to want to add. The hotter it is, the less. And the longer the cure time you need, you might go a little bit light. But this is just going to be one fairly thin coat. Right now, our temps are fairly mild. We are somewhere around high 70s today, maybe close to 80 degrees. And I'm using a nice Valspar paintbrush. This was like 10 or 12 bucks. You're going to get a little nicer, smoother finish if you go that route. Now, and we're going to come back in here and we're just going to put a little cover coat over all of our repairs, and that's going to kind of seal what's underneath, and that's going to give you a layer of nice pure gel coat over your repair area. Now, if you had a spray rig, you could obviously spray. You could use a little Prevail sprayer to spray a little touch up if you wanted to. If you had a small, like a 1.5 millimeter spray rig, you could use that. But a lot of times here in the shop, you'll see me using a brush because it's just so darn fast. It's kind of convenient, and you don't have to worry about overspray getting everywhere. Encourage you folks at home too. We've got a lot of folks that are kind of new to working with fiberglass, gel coat. We've got a depth of videos here on the channel. If you're just getting here, all kind of content, and I promise you folks, all throughout the videos, even though they're long, they're information rich, and there's going to be content all throughout. It's going to be valuable, so be sure to watch. And I tell you, it also helps the channel out. The long duration watch times tells the algorithm that it's good content and you like it, and they'll promote it. And we're at a place where we could seriously consider doing more and more content, cooler projects, bigger crop projects, different materials being used. All right, that looks pretty good there. Now, I had even touched up a little bit here on the back side. If y'all remember, there were a couple spots. Now, again, one thing you can do with this is you can, I call it hot coating. You can get some gel coat on that has wax in it, and you can just give it a few minutes. And a lot of times we will take a little Wagner. This is another little trick, like working in cooler weather. I know we're coming into the winter months, and you can use some heat lamps. You can use a little Wagner heat gun there to throw a little heat. But notice I am moving around and I'm staying back a foot or so. You don't want to get too close. You don't want to burn or heat up the gel coat too much. Same deal here. We're just throwing a little bit of heat. And we're moving around. You do not want to stay in one place. Back up to these. I think this console is coming along very nicely, and we've been having a lot of nice comments. You folks at home have been sharing with me what you guys are working on. That kind of helps me a little bit come up with ideas for content, what we're going to do in the future. We really do appreciate hearing from everyone. Lots of positive comments, really encouraging. I will try my best to answer as many of your questions as possible. We have recently opened up some additional Patreon spots. There for a while I was kind of maxed out, but now that our summer charter season is really winding down, going to be in the shop a lot more. And if you need direct consulting work with me, like if you got a major project and you need to talk to me on the phone or email some pictures, something more direct, Patreon is a way to do that. And it's a pretty cool service if you've never done it. And you can even comment if you have questions. I'll do my best to answer any comments y'all might have. But Patreon is definitely a way to get in touch with me and spend more time and communicate in depth if you have a major project or questions that I haven't answered on the channel. All right, so there's another little bit. See, we're stacking it. So we put a little bit on, we gave it a minute or two, threw a little bit of heat up there, and then just very lightly we're able to stack. Basically, we're getting 2 coats on at once. And the wax that's in the surface seal or the wax gel coat basically floats to the surface of the gel coat and creates an air barrier, which is what gel coat needs. It is not like a traditional paint where air kind of helps cure it or dry it. It needs to be blocked off from the air in order to cure properly. It's called air inhibited. We've got videos talking about that in detail as well here on the channel. Really just kind of trying to stack it in there, even though it's got some brush strokes on there. When we hit that with some 220 grit paper, it's going to sand it down very rapidly. 3M Dry Guide Coat, one of my favorite products we use here in the shop. Our gel coat spots have cured for about an hour or so, which that's pretty rapid. Now the guide coat, if you haven't ever used it, you turn the applicator upside down. It's a carbon dust, and it allows you to see exactly where you've sanded and where you have not. Now that's a fairly heavy application. One of my favorite other tricks is to put just a few drops of Dawn in your water in your spray bottle, and that'll keep your sandpaper from clogging up. We're using some 220 grit, and if you wanted to go all the way with this, we would start at 220, 400, 600, 800, 1200, then wax, compound, and polish. But you can see we've got some 200, 220 on our little 3M sanding block there. And again, we'll put links to all this stuff below the video's description for you folks. That'll help kind of support the channel. Now we are rushing through this pretty fast for the sake of time. Folks, this has been one afternoon, but you can see how the guide coat and a little bit of Dawn really helps you to see where the highs and the lows are. You want to stay fairly focused. Now some people, if you're fairly new to wet sanding, you may want to put some blue masking tape around the perimeter to minimize your exposure. You don't want to be sanding all out here around the edges. You want to keep it fairly focused. Hold the block nice and flat. I kind of like little circular motions on a spot like this. And you can see the guide coat is already showing me exactly where our highs and lows are. You can see right where the hole that we filled, there's still a bit of a low. I'm doing this left-handed right now, which is a little awkward, but I can still do it. Do a little up, down, side to side, holding the block very flat. If you catch the gel coat, as soon as it's dry enough to sand, but hasn't been curing for a long time, it's a little bit softer. There's a few hours there. There's a few hours, a bit of a window, I guess you could call it, where the new gel coat is cured enough to sand, but not as hard as the surrounding gel coat, and you'll get a lot faster material removal there than if you wait a few days for it to cure. It'll reach full hardness, and it can still be sanded at that point, but it's going to be a lot tougher to do. Now you can see the guide coat again is showing us some of the lower edges. We're going to kind of come down here now. Again, remember, don't just focus on the low. You still got to kind of sand the whole area, but it tells you exactly when you have gone far enough. A little bit more. See right there? Maybe my cameraman can zoom in. Otherwise, without the guide coat, it would be very, very hard to see that subtle little bit there that still needs, want to kind of change direction. We're doing a nice circular motion. And folks, don't be discouraged if it doesn't go perfect the first time. Look at there. Wow. And that was in real time, folks. I have literally been doing this my entire life, though. My dad was a boat builder. My brother's a boat builder. I come from a family of fishermen and captains, and this is all we've ever done. So practice makes perfect. The more you do this and the right materials, that little 3M block, the 05686, money well spent, an assortment of sandpaper, 220, 400, 600, 800, 1200 are your standards. And then that dry guide coat, super helpful there. And just methodically work your way through. Now, if you were only fixing that one area, at this point, I would generally stop. We would wipe this. I'm looking for a paper towel there. We would wipe this completely dry. Maybe even use a little Wagner heat gun or something to warm it up. You don't want any moisture. And you would apply another coat of the guide coat, and then I would go to the 400. Sand it the same as we did this one, 6, 8, 12. I know I'm jumping all over the place. I'm wearing my son out, my poor cameraman. He's like, where are you going, Dad? But anyway, that is the general process. Now, if you wanted to see more about the polishing and the buffing and the waxing, I've got several other videos here on the channel that are dedicated to just doing that. I've got a 3-part video series, and then we've got some other gel coat repair videos that are really in-depth, that we kind of take it from A to Z, start to finish, even some color matching. This, you'll notice, this is just a base white that we put on here. It is not the same as the surrounding gel coat, but that is okay because we are going to be gel coating the whole entire console when we're all done, and buffing and polishing it. And then stay tuned, folks. Transom replacement, floor stringer. We're going to be pretty much finishing up here on the console for now, jumping back to the main task at hand. And so you folks at home, stay tuned. And remember, if you're joining the content, like, share, comment. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. It helps the channel grow. It helps us do more of this kind of stuff. Captain Joe, Fish Bump TV, my son Logan is my amazing cameraman, and we will catch you folks in the next episode.